morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
All right, yourself. Where are you?
LA.
Oh wow.
So, my that's why I'm chuckling because I am sleepy as hell. But
Lord, yes.
so my hat's off to anybody that watches us live on the West Coast because this is foolishness. Oh goodness. But how are you?
I'm doing all right.
So I was like, when we had the brief pause, I'm sitting here like dusting off. I said, "Oh shoot, wait a minute, there's no music playing. I gotta pay attention."
Lord.
Oh yes, I've been up since 3 a.m.
Mm.
Oh, and we got 2 tight hours because I got a plane to catch. I'm going back home today.
Okay.
But I came out here to see Fridays with Tam and Chance live in the Valentine's Day show, which was really nice.
Oh,
Except
okay.
the line was too long, and so I did not get a picture with them. I said, I cannot. It was nice. I got pictures of them. I just don't have pictures
Okay.
of them. And I got pictures of their children. Their children were there as well. So it was cool.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And Kev on stage and his wife, which
Okay.
he's a whole fool, but it was great. It was great. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Congratulations to the city of Philly. I know
Thank
y'all
you.
having a ball.
Yes. Look, they are because it's too cold.
Oh. All I can think about is, wow, I need to be at the red market. I'm sure it is going down. Congratulations on y'all Super Bowl. That's beautiful. That was beautiful. Even though I was tired, but I watched some of it. Most of it. And of course the halftime show was
Of course.
with all of the things that I needed it to be. It wasn't the greatest or the best one. Prince will all probably be my favorite one of all time.
Right.
Because I'm a Prince fan. But dude was he did his thing. I was my mom was like, what? It's like, and then she'll hear the little song because we do a line dance to Not Like Us. And she was like, I heard that song before. I said, I know. So it was fun. It was fun. All right. Well, I found some stuff. I said, oh, we got some stuff for him to be right on in. Right on in. All right. Well, let's get this started. Welcome to our Saturday morning tea. Here we brew up the hottest topics in healthcare. We discuss health information, news, education, certification tips. I do have tea though. Me being giddy on the the West Coast. See, I can't even get it straight. It's still dark outside. I'm like, it is pitch black outside. What is happening? Certification tips, entrepreneurship, and the revenue cycle at large. So as you come in, don't forget to hit the thumbs up or like button. I'm Clarice Warner, the girl with the pearls, the founder and senior education director of the Professional Reimbursement Network, LLC, where coding education is key. And PRN is a healthcare compliance consultancy located in Cincinnati, Ohio, that specializes in revenue cycle and regulatory compliance in education. And let me ask you, do you know what it takes to be a certified marketable medical coder? Well, before I introduce my co-host, let me share with you information on a free email course on the 5 steps to become a certified marketable medical coder.
Are you interested in medical coding, but not sure where to start? And scared of wasting time and resources? Let me help you with the right steps to become a certified marketable medical coder. Learn more at bit.ly/5stepscoder.
Music could do it though. The music could do it. If you're interested in getting more information about the 5 steps to become a certified marketable medical coder, then check out the video description for the link. So joining me today is my partner in success, my co-host, Mr. Jesse, the registered trademark. Put some respect on his name, the coding nurse. Sir, introduce yourself and tell the folks all about you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jesse. I live in Philadelphia. I have been in healthcare for a long time. In 2014, I left the bedside and transitioned into risk adjustment. So that was my first foray into HIM. And during the pandemic in 2020, I created a company, the Coding Nurse LLC, where I help nurses and other people in healthcare with a clinical background transition into the wonderful world of HIM.
Cool. And how's that going?
It's going along pretty good. I have 2 classes right now, so I don't know. I don't know when I'm going to have my next one because I would normally start one in March, but I don't have a date yet because I have to wait for this class to finish, and I think we might go a little over.
Okay. Is that a good thing?
It is what it is.
I hear you. I hear you. That is funny. All right. Well, before we jump in, let me remind you that you can join in and add to the conversation. Don't be shy. Your opinion matters and is welcomed here. So, friends, use the chat. And only thing that we ask, if you have a question for us, that you type Q first so that we know it's an actual question for us and you're not talking amongst yourselves and we don't miss it. All right. So for those of you who are joining us or watching the replay, today we are talking Medicare's 2025 overhaul. Oh, no, we're not. I didn't fix that. Oh, no, we're not. We are talking the ABCD, the art of defensible medical coding. That's what we're talking about today. All right. See what happens when you're out here on the West Coast, out here in this California. The thing is, though, I didn't see, because I was nervous coming out here because all you hear about is fires and, everybody like, oh my God, don't go, you're going to burn. And I'm like, I reached out to the people who was doing the show and they were like, no, it's fine down there. There's, you would never know. And true enough, you would never know that anything was happening anywhere else.
Wow.
Right. There's nothing. And I don't know if there was something happening. Some Asians, it's so many Asian people, tourists here. Yesterday I ran into, I said, well, I wanted to ask, is something happening? Is something going on there? Did all y'all hear? But they having a ball and, it was Valentine's Day. So love was in the air and red and pink and all of the things. And yeah, it was all of the things. But anyway, so before we get started, let's take a look at our church announcements. Okay, I don't even have my regular computer. Let me just start here. That's probably why I'm having technical challenges. I don't have my regular computer and everything is little teeny tiny. Like, what is happening? Okay. Now you have a fan. You do. I know you do. Hey. Hey. Okay. Hey. I really don't have any church announcements. There was one thing that came out though that I'll mention. Because we used to have to work with this all the time. There was some guidance from the latest final rule I'm thinking it's either inpatient or outpatient. I can't remember which one specifically, on condition code 44. And so they got the okay to allow those changes to go forth. And so with condition code 44, it's actually it's a small pool of people, because people have to be on traditional Medicare, not any traditional fee-for-service Medicare, not any managed care plans. And it allows for them to have appeal rights when going from inpatient to outpatient, or observation, and observation to inpatient. So you lose appeal rights going from one place of service to the other place of service. But if you have the condition code 44, it allows you to appeal. But again, as everything in healthcare, it's all about the documentation. So the provider would have to make sure that they're documenting appropriately. So I know that information came out Friday. I think that came out Friday. So if you work in with any condition code 44, and really the best way to do it is just make sure, I mean, you can eliminate all of the foolishness if the person is placed in the proper setting off the rip. But sometimes things happen and that doesn't happen. But if you're working with condition code 44, make sure you check that information out. That's really all I got.
The only have is, it's an ongoing situation. I think it would be a good time.
Something is going on with your mic, sir. What are you doing?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you better. You was going in and out of muffled.
Oh, I need to slide up some.
Okay.
As the only announcement I have, and it's an ongoing situation, it might make a good topic, somewhere in the future. But all of this upheaval with the government. So I just read on Becker's review that HHS is laying off 5,200 people under the direction of our current president. They have to lay off all 5,200 of their probationary employees. So
well, they said they would be the first on the chopping block. Unfortunately, it's crazy.
So it's going to be interesting to see how all this will impact audits and, over reviews and all of that for programs.
Yeah. That's why, because a lot of the regulations have been put on pause. And so that's why it was interesting that the one about condition code 44 went through. So yeah, it's gonna be crazy. Well, all of the inspector generals were dismissed. Even though healthcare still is going on, we still have to do what's needed to provide care to patients. It's gonna be a real interesting time, not only for this year, but in the future, when this year gets audited or when this year gets reviewed. It's going to be real interesting.
If this year gets reviewed.
That part. They may be like, just act like that it didn't happen. Or not. I don't know. It's going to be real interesting in our world. But
especially in terms of enforcement.
Yeah. We've seen some interesting times before, so here we are. Good morning, Crafty Coder, our on the street correspondent. Good morning. All right. So, I was tickled when I ran across this article because now I'm seeing all kinds. It's like everybody got a little acronym gimmick or something everything. Even when I was looking at this, the query thing, there was something called the trick for querying or something. I was like, everybody got a little gimmick. I don't know. Maybe is that what we're doing now? I don't know. But everybody got one. So we're going to look at this framework that basically is changing how we approach medical coding, and it's the ABCD method. And so let's talk about this approach and how it could potentially transform your coding. And then as I was putting together this, because we're going to talk a little bit about coding, denials, and CDI. It's all relative, and I wanted the audience, particularly medical coders, to understand the importance, again, the importance of your role. You are the first step. You are the first line in all of this. I mean, of course, the providers and seeing the patients and all of that, but abstracting the information and coding the information accurately or not can have all kinds of impacts on what happens with that patient, what happens with that reimbursement, what happens on the back end, whether or not it's reimbursed, and denials, and so on and so forth. Even with CDI, now you got this whole department that now they got to go in and look and see. And it's like, really, it's the coder. Again, I always say, but we have documentation, and so we can't do what we need to do unless the documentation is supporting it. But just understand the role that you play and the importance of the role that you play. So don't play with it. I'm hearing a lot of folks that the reason why they want to get into this field is like, really? Don't play. Don't come over here playing. Don't come over here playing. We don't need that kind of drama. All right. So first, let's talk about the A. The A is accurate coding. And so, we're making sure that things are accurate. And when we talk about accurate coding, we're not just, again, doing what folks think we do, the bare minimum of matching some alphanumeric characters to conditions. We're actually talking about telling the patient's story through data. That information is data collection. That information that we abstract from these records, be it inpatient, outpatient, professional, wherever, generates data. And while, we usually are gung-ho and thinking about the reimbursement side of it, there's a whole other lane that this data is useful for, and it needs to be accurate as well. So really, that means that every code must truly reflect what's documented in the record. I know we can go on and on and on about documentation, but that's what we start with. Your clinical indicators must support your code selection. Documentation should paint a clear picture of the patient's condition. And then your coding should stand up to an external review. You should know, you should feel confident in what you're submitting as far as your coding. I know we got productivity standards, and I know we have all of this extra stress related to our workloads. But at the end of the day, you need to make sure that the information that you're providing is accurate, and fight for that additional time that's needed to make sure that, and I know that's probably easier said than done, but sometimes you just have to say, hey, I needed this extra time. My productivity may have hit, a little slump because I had this particular record that had this, that, and the third, and I needed to make sure, and I needed to verify or whatever. Again, hope I know we've talked about this too, where you have folks in leadership positions who don't know the role, don't know the job, don't know what happens. And so, they may not be the best advocate for you, but sometimes you may have to advocate for yourself. And Mr. Jesse, you know the role. Jump in. So here's an example. If you're coding a case of heart failure, you need more than just the term heart failure in the record. Again, you need supporting diagnostic findings, clinical indicators, treatment protocols, and of course, provider documentation that will align with that diagnosis. Next is our B, by the book coding.
I want to just jump back to the A, because that heart failure is a perfect example, because a lot of people, and heart failure is coded by type and acuity. And I think that needs to be really, really emphasized, especially to new coders, because it's in inpatient, you really have to have both in order to code it accurately. And there will be clinical evidence for one thing or another, whether it's acute or chronic, and also the type. I mean, and then sometimes for the type, you might have to dig. You might have to look up previous admissions. You may have to look up outside records to find out when that person last had an echocardiogram and what did it say. What was their, most recent ejection fraction. So it's a lot of due diligence you have to do, and it just goes back to what you were talking about you have to be able to explain why it's taking you a certain amount of time to be in a record, especially based on documentation, because you may have conflicting documentation. You may have one. Cardiology may say is this type, the attending may say it's another type, but what does the evidence say? Right. So, what is the clinical evidence? What it is pointing to? So then you have to send queries to get it resolved. So it takes time, but you really have to go that extra step to make sure that what you're coding is accurate.
Absolutely. Good morning, Carolyn.
Good morning.
My heart goes out to her because she's on this coast over here. I feel her. I feel her. Okay, so the other one. So next is B. Oh, and let me let you all know the articles for today are linked into the description of the video. But this article came from Littman Education in their coding corner, where they wanted to talk about coding and this ABCD process. Okay. Give them a shout out. Girl, I got my tea and I'm sleepy at 6:24 Pacific Standard Time. I don't know how y'all do it, but I'm glad y'all do. We love having y'all. Okay. So by the book, that's what your B is. And this is your shield against denials. Again, here's what this involves. Following your official coding guidelines. We cannot stress that enough. Using authoritative sources like Coding Clinic, avoiding that foolishness of we've always done it this way. That's how we have to do it. Really?
And I don't know what is going on, but what should be in that under that bullet point too is also company coding policy. Like, I don't understand why these people don't feel as though they have to have coding policy. Your coding policy is not we use the coding guidelines. That's not. No.
It's much more extensive than that. And even with, we'll find when we talk CDI, those policies, I mean, are very, very explicit as to what needs to happen and why things need to happen. And coding policies should be the same. And they shouldn't be something that are sitting in a little binder that's dusty that nobody uses. They need to be something that is referenced regularly. I mean, I know you see several types of the same, potentially, depending on your specialty, you may see the same type of cases over and over again. But again, once you understand or once you know what is happening on the back end, say things are getting denied, say things are not being reimbursed, say things are being audited, you need to take that information and not only educate your coding staff, but also that may be a clear indication that a policy needs to change or need to be amended or maybe even created. You know, as we always say, CMS don't tell you what you need to do. You just need to follow it. Put it in your policy. And then sometimes having the conversation, putting on the compliance hat, having a conversation with the providers, because again, sometimes you have those who always think it's a big, they're out to get us. We can't do anything. We can't do this, that, and a third. And it's like, no, have the conversation about what they're telling you you can do. Here is the box that you can play in. Play all the way up to the end if you need to. But everybody needs to know what that looks like. And then creating those policies for where each role has some skin in the game. I don't understand.
Me either, because that's like in nursing. Like nurses follow something that they call the Nurse Practice Act, but in every unit there's also a policy and procedure manual. Every unit. So I just don't understand how something as important as coding is just treated so, willy-nilly by a lot of these facilities. I just don't understand it.
Right. Oh God, somebody turned the lights on outside. And lastly, for the B is, again, being able to cite specific guidelines that support your decisions. So here is an example of how, using this by the book method helped save an organization. They had documented every guideline reference for their MSDRG assignments. And when they were questioned about them, they could immediately point to the specific guidance supporting their decision. So again, it's one thing to have a feeling about it. It's one thing to talk about it, but you got to be about it and make sure that you have, people want to see that black and white information. This is where I found, this is why we do what we do, based on, this coding guidance, based on our policy, based on all of these things. And that goes a long, long way with your denials. Mr. Jesse, you want
to? No, not that point.
Okay. C stands for complete documentation. Complete. And it's a game changer. Again, this doesn't necessarily rely on, or for us as the health information professional. However, we do have kind of an obligation to, let our providers know. Our providers need to understand the importance of their documentation. And complete documentation means capturing the full scope of patient care, including all relevant diagnoses, documenting severity indicators, recording complications and comorbidities. Why is my alarm going off? See, I'm supposed to be asleep until now. Recording complications and comorbidities and all of that. So think about your documentation like building a house. You need a strong foundation, solid walls, and a good roof. And missing any piece compromises the entire structure. That's what happens with this documentation. That's why we talk about it all the time. That's why we are always stressing the importance of documentation, because again, documentation is what's what, after the service is what starts this chain, and we can't do what we need to do if the documentation is lacking and loose.
Our, our favorite CDI antagonist, Glenn Krause, he had made a post, I want to say it was last week, and he was talking about how there's, there's starting to be denials. Well, I guess there always have been denials from the payers, because when they review the queries, they are saying, in their opinion, the queries were leading. And he was saying that because ultimately you're supposed to query and provider educate yourself out of the need for a query. Ultimately, that's the end game.
That's the end game, right?
And when you constantly have to send the same queries for the same conditions over and over and over, that's the problem.
Yep.
Because then it like people don't even understand like how clogged the back end becomes because of that.
And it's frustrating. It's frustrating all around. And if you got your query fatigue and all of those things, well, if you just fix the problem once it's been, once you understand and it's been identified, then you wouldn't get the same query. We wouldn't have to keep talking about this over and over and over again.
And then you have, like in a lot of places, I just think that too many people are just allowed to run amok. Just because somebody gives you a template, a query template, doesn't mean that query that you wrote was correct. It doesn't even mean that it was compliant. Like it's, even though, once again, even though there is strict documentation available about what constitutes a compliant query, I think what happens is every query is very individualized to that case, and it's and I think that that's where people get lost. They don't know how to take the subtlety and then put it into a standard. And even the question, like the very beginning of the query is the question that you're posing to this provider, and that makes or breaks it. It doesn't matter if you have all the clinical indicators. If you're asking, if you're leading this person, then it's for nothing.
Yep. And then the last part of this ABCD thing is defensible coding. And this should pretty much tie everything together. So again, every code should be supported by clear documentation. Your clinical indicators should be readily available. Query responses should be properly documented, and your coding rationale should be clear and consistent. Remember, if you can't defend it during an audit, maybe you should consider whether or not it should be coded. Because again, all of these things are the framework to receiving and keeping the reimbursement that you are seeking. All right. Questions?
That's even though, look, because we're going to.
I know we're going to your favorite part.
It could all be so simple.
It can.
Because right here, it just lays it out. It's right there. Like, but it is like pulling hen's teeth. Like, it is just people just, there are so many companies out here who miss the mark completely. And they're not even trying, because, like I can just tell from, like, even with me interviewing, how resistant people are. Like, and especially like how when you interview with providers, like versus coding staff, like, because like the interview I had like 2 weeks ago, His whole thing was he's just trying to make it easy for the physicians, not making it compliant and making it beneficial to the members, because that's why everybody should be there.
Yes.
And it's just this whole I just don't see any end in sight, and with less oversight coming, it's just going to get worse.
It's gonna get crazy. I totally agree with you. It's and folks gonna be out here just doing what they think they can do. Like, okay, what they gonna do? It's like, oh, all right. Well, let's talk about some of these queries and how making sure your queries are compliant and that they support accurate coding. So, and I thought about this, like, even though we have CDI departments that do some of this, there are some maybe smaller practices that don't necessarily have CDI, but can also benefit from understanding how you need to query those providers. Because you don't necessarily have to have the huge department with all of the folks, but you still got to get clarification about what you're coding or the accuracy of the documentation. And so there is a right and a wrong way, in my key sweat voice.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
To query a provider. So in the document, well, first I got this little book that I was like, oh, okay, well, let's start here. I got this, I think when I was at somebody's conference. It was either at AHIMA or ATCA. But it was it was a little medical query tip guide. So it was a little book that lists information. But you know me, I'm always going to, well, what's the source? What's the source? And in the source, there was actually the AHIMA and ACDIS guidelines for a compliant query. And so from there, I began digging and trying to compare. And so that document has been recently as of, I think 2023 was the last addendum that they had in that document, updated because there were so many questions related to queries. And my thing is, I remember years ago when these queries came out, like some of the stuff to me is like, y'all don't know this yet? I don't know. It's like, I remember when y'all was talking about this way back when. How y'all don't know this? But there are different types of queries. You have open-ended queries, multiple choice queries, and oftentimes there are also some yes, no queries that can be used with appropriate situations. But again, all of them have the tone where you can't lead. There's nowhere can you lead your provider in saying, pick this, choose this. You have to structure them appropriately. They should be clear and concise and allow them to assist in providing the information that you're looking for. One of the things that I saw, and I think we may come to that, but it was saying like providing the provider information on what you saw and why you're asking. And so they can actually go back and then they can read for themselves maybe how unclear what they documented was. And I thought that was good. I don't know if that's something that people use all the time, but I thought that was a good practice.
Now,
folks can use.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
Oh, I'm done.
Okay. So what Ensemble did that I really liked, and it really wasn't so much, well, the way that they had it set up. They had it set up that they wanted you to provide all the information that the provider would need to make that determination in the query. Like they shouldn't have to go, like, so if there were lab values, copy the lab values into the query that you were referencing. If it was documentation, put the documentation, the little blurb or whatever was documentation you're referring to, the date and who documented it. Now, the problem with that is Epic gives you a character limit for queries. So, so sometimes you really have to pick and choose what you want to put in there because you don't have enough space. I've had to try to finagle and try to like cut stuff down or abbreviate to try to get it in because you really need it, but you don't have enough characters. It's not open-ended like that. They have a character.
They changed that, or is that a rule?
That's still now. It's a character limit.
Wow.
And I don't know how you put a character limit on something that important.
Right. Especially if that information is needed.
Yes.
To get what you're needing from that provider.
So you have to learn how to just. So I mean, I learned because in the beginning, I used to always like when I hit send, exceed the character limit. So I kind of like learned how to shave it down. Like, okay, well, I'm starting to feel like I'm reaching my maximum. But it's a good, in my opinion, it's a good query. It has what it needs, but you just have to stay under a certain character limit.
Okay. And another thing is understanding when should you query, like when to query and when not to query. And then sometime the timing of the query is important too, making sure that you do it at the appropriate time, where the provider and I think to your point and to the way in which you mentioned Ensemble uses the queries, it's really, 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 to me, this makes even more sense to add the information in, or at least reference the information that they can go back to see, because they see lots of patients every day. They see, they're doing a lot of documentation. They're not going to remember everything that they said or talked about from case to case, patient to patient, and each patient situation is different. So helping them, not leading them, but helping them go back and refer to their documentation, I think that is just, that's a best practice, if you will, for any type of querying process.
I would agree.
Yes. So sometimes, you would need, in certain clinical scenarios may require some querying, situations, understanding again, situations where querying may not be appropriate and don't use them. And that too should possibly be in the policy that, is available to those who need to reach out to these providers. Sometimes the information is there. So again, as a coder, you need to know where to find information to do your job. And remember when we looked at, this was a while back, we looked at that E&M visit where we had the one lady and the doctor and they weren't agreeing, and because things weren't lined up the way she was accustomed to seeing it, then she wanted to down code the visit, but then also begin this whole querying thing of this doctor. Your stuff is there, you need to know where to reference it, and that's your job as a coder, and so making sure because then now you're bothering them with stuff where it's like, ma'am and sir, it's already right here. Why are you sending me this?
But like for instance, what I cannot, I used to, it used to drive me crazy. Sepsis.
Mm-hmm.
So some people are just really like overzealous, and it's like I think they really need to teach sepsis criteria. That's why I think there needs to be a national standard for sepsis, so everybody's on the same page. But anyway, if a provider documents sepsis once, you have to query whether there's clinical support for it or not. And I think that's ridiculous. Like, if somebody has an infection, because every infection is not sepsis.
Right.
But if one provider says that the person has sepsis and there's no clinical support, like they don't have, they don't meet the two standards of service criteria, like they don't have an elevated lactic acid, they don't have an elevated procalcitonin. What in the world? Like, why would you have to send the provider a query? But if you don't do it, the coders won't code it. Like, they'll say you have to send a query, or if they let it go, then the auditors will come back and say, well, you have to send a query, because the provider has to literally type rule it out. He has to he has to document to rule it out. Otherwise, you have to query, and I think it's a waste, especially if there's no clinical support for it.
Right. You're right. I think that yeah.
But this is why you need policy.
That's why you need policies. Wow.
Because I had to do that a bunch of times.
So also think about, and we've alluded to that here today, clinical indicators, and really they should tell a clear, consistent story. And creating strong clinical indicators means using specific relevant findings, citing laboratory values appropriately, referencing diagnostic studies, including treatment protocols, and then documenting provider assessments. So all of that can assist in the documentation and or your querying when you are providing these queries to providers. And then kind of best practice and retention. Make sure there is, and these again go to your policies that are needed. Have a query retention requirement, documentation standards across the board. Most, if not all healthcare providers are using electronic medical records. And so making sure that there is an understanding of the electronic query system, like you said, it's with Epic, there's a character requirement, a character limit, making sure people understand that. And then even if there's like a word that can be shortened, or, making sure that everybody understands what that shortened word means when they see it, creating those types of documents within the policy is, again, a best practice. Audit preparation, and then compliance monitoring, making sure that somebody is still actually looking over and verifying. And then if they see where some queries are out of compliance, having the conversation with the coders, CDI folks, to talk about why is this out of compliance? What can we do to better make this query process better? Sleepy y'all. Make this query process better.
Now, because when I used to write, the only thing that I put in every single one of my queries is a choice for other, for freehand, especially if you're doing multiple, any kind of query, to be honest. I always put space for other, because 9 times out of 10, you're doing a multiple choice. Like, you want them to pick between conditions.
Correct.
Or even, if it's a rule out, if it's a yes, no, like, do you agree or do you not agree? You still have to have a space, because you have to give them a chance, because otherwise, if you only give them choices, then their defenses, I could only pick these choices, as opposed to I wasn't able to write in anything freehand or type in something. So you want to give them an option. And very rarely, like, and in this document is query practice document. Like they talk about, well, in query they talk about like unable to determine as an option. Very, very, very rarely would I ever use unable to determine, because if you give them a way out, they're going to take it.
Yes.
That's going to make it easy for them, and you're still stuck with where you are, because if unable to determine, there's nothing you can do with that.
Yes.
So it doesn't get addressed, and then it messes up the potential reimbursement. Look, you just need to make a decision, or just say, what you think it really is. That's why you want to leave that box, because you may have listed choices that they don't agree with any, but if they're able to type it in, well, I think it's XYZ, and that's what it is.
I agree. And then for the actual document, the position paper, the 2023 update, I think it's on page 26. They wanted to specifically address feedback related to denial trends. And you mentioned this, and something that Glenn Krause has always mentioned. Denial trends have indicated that payers have been challenging diagnoses obtained through query by questioning query compliance. These challenges should be evaluated to ensure they reflect compliance versus best practice. So your coding guidelines and your AHA coding clinic guidance consistently state that when the documentation is unclear, the provider should be queried. Provider queries are a necessity, allowing both CDI and coding professionals to effectively clarify the health record and to capture appropriate patient complexity and reimbursement for resources provided. The guidelines for achieving a compliant query practice, published jointly by AHIMA and ACDIS in 2022, provides the best practices for query professionals to produce compliant provider queries. The writers encourage organizations to draft query policies and practices based upon this guidance. They also give some very good examples in here too, thereby supporting a compliant query process. These policies should be agreed upon within the contracting process, and they should be used to evaluate query compliance and defend that compliance when challenged. Both entities, healthcare organizations, and payers should hold each other responsible for following these policies when writing and evaluating queries. So that's what they added for the 2023 information. So again, I really wanted to bring this document to light because I know larger organizations have a CDI department or CDI professionals working and doing this work. Smaller ones may not, but this work still has to go on. And so again, in my Keith Sweat voice, there's a right and a wrong way. Here is the framework. Here is the information that will assist you in making sure that you are querying your providers compliantly and getting the information that you need.
Querying is, I mean, it's not as, it's complex. It's nowhere near, it's not a cookie cutter, cut and dry type of situation. And it was like, I would say it was the last thing that I really felt comfortable with in the entire CDI process. I had to do it over and over and over and over. And what I did was I saved all of mine in a little folder.
And that was a best practice retention to assist you in that process. And then you learn from that. That's a learn or an educational opportunity.
Yep.
That people should take note. All right, y'all. Well, I hope you got some good information on understanding why it's important that as coders, your role impacts so many different entities, and you should take it seriously. Don't play with it. Don't play with it. Don't play. We have valuable roles in the revenue cycle, and understanding your role, understanding what you need to do, and you can't necessarily. This is another thing I think that I'll probably end with. You can't necessarily just say, even though we know there is some bad documentation out there, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes you got to look for stuff. Sometimes you got to search for things, and it's okay to understand that. Yeah, it's there. Why are you providers or maybe thinking, why are you bothering me? It's there. But sometimes you got to make sure that you've done all your due diligence before going to them and getting clarification. I think that would at least ease some of this back and forth and contention that providers and coders may have. All righty. Cool.
This was good.
This was good. I'll see a lot of questions. Y'all, is it a lot? Is it early? Look, I know it's early for me,
Exactly.
but I thought this was an excellent opportunity to kind of introduce or reintroduce this information. Oh, what was it? In here, they talk about the little, the trick queries. And they just call it treatment. A condition must be monitored, treated, and evaluated, require increased allocation of nursing resources, or require an extended stay. Risk refers to the relevance of the diagnosis to the patient and the encounter for care. Indicators refers to the clinical indicators that comprise the overall clinical picture and are pertinent to supporting or ruling out a diagnosis. And then the C in trick, so it's TRIC. Compliant questions. The question should always be clear and concise without being leading. Be professional and use proper spelling and punctuation. All righty. Cool. Well, yeah, this was good. I enjoyed.
Exactly. I did too. And I mean, I don't think there's enough emphasis put on queries, and I really think that a lot of places silo the ability to write queries because, like you mentioned, in smaller places, I think that they need more help than larger facilities because they
Absolutely.
have more people. Because I think that they need to really everywhere coders should be able to write queries, and in a lot of places they don't. They're not able to. Now they're able to like request documentation, but that's about it. But I don't think like how can somebody who has to code the medical record not? Why do you have to ask CDI to send a query for this condition? When first of all, if you have to ask them, then they missed the opportunity to begin with, so they're not even aware.
And that's where that timing comes in.
Yes. Because in the perfect world, by the time it gets to coding, especially when you have a CDI department, it's supposed to be, as they say in the UK, done and dusted. All they should have to do is just put in those codes where everything has been addressed, but that's not the case.
Yeah.
And especially even in mortality reviews, because even though we know like the MSDRGs are for Medicare patients, they use APR DRGs, and when you're in 3M, they calculate both. But every mortality review, they want a person to be at 4 over 4 for SOI and ROM, which is extreme, and you have to sometimes send queries to get there. Sometimes you just don't. I mean, people expire for all number of reasons. Sometimes it is what it is. But I know I've had cases where somebody I was filed on expires, and they might be like 3 over 3. But you read through and like usually like the last hour or so, it's something in there that you can query that they didn't document. Like I just needed one time I sent the query, I needed one diagnosis, but I ended up getting like 3 from the query because he must have reviewed the documentation and then just put in some stuff. So I got this person 4 over 4 because in a lot of places they don't review cases that are 4 over 4, and for the mortality committee they only review cases that are less because they review them to see if there was like some kind of breakdown in care that led
Right.
to it. So if it's
Right.
4/4, you expect somebody that's like the extreme of the extreme.
Right.
So kind of like that's understandable. So
Right.
they get taken off the table. So that's why you like whenever they taught us like whenever you have a person that expired, you always want to make sure that that SOI and ROM is 4/4. And if you can't get it, you just have to explain why, or send a query to get it there. So querying is extremely vital.
Yes.
To the
And
revenue
again,
cycle.
not just for, the reimbursement. This is data. This is making
Quality.
sure that things are accurate for that patient through that course, regardless of the disposition of that patient at the end of that care.
Right.
Good example. Good example. All right, y'all. Well, hopefully my stuff comes up. Yeah, okay. Took you off of my computer. Thirsty for fresh perspectives on the healthcare revenue cycle? Well, by becoming one of the PRNT sippers, you'll join a community of sharp minds who savor the complexities of the healthcare revenue cycle. See how we bring all this stuff together? So why sip alone when you can steep in knowledge together? Come, let's spill the tea on industry insights. Here you can expect, as a valued member of the Tea Sippers, exclusive healthcare insights. So gain access to in-depth articles, webinars, and resources covering the latest healthcare trends, compliance updates, and revenue cycle best practices. Early access. Be the first to receive expert insights and guides, ensuring you stay ahead in the ever-evolving healthcare industry. Personalized support. Enjoy direct access to our team of experts for guidance on medical coding, compliance issues, revenue cycle management. I feel like the one little guy, I watch him on YouTube, and he'd be like, he does financial stuff, and he'd be like, if I ever made you money, put a yes in the chat. If we ever gave you something that helped you professionally, put a yes in the chat. We're here to answer your questions and support your professional growth. And finally, community connection, which is my personal favorite. Join a private community of healthcare professionals where you can network, share experience, and collaborate on finding solutions to common challenges. So by supporting us, you're not only advancing your healthcare knowledge and career, but also contributing to the success of Professional Reimbursement Network, LLC, which is a resource that empowers healthcare professionals like you to thrive in their roles, goals, and dreams. Thank you, Carolyn. Yes. Oh, Ian. I love him. All right. So thank you for considering becoming a member of the PRNT Sippers. For the cost of 2 cups of tea per month, you can join the community. So check out the link in the description of the video. Your support means the world to us, and we look forward to helping you excel in the world of health information and healthcare revenue cycle. Yay. All right, y'all. Well, again, thank you so much for joining the Saturday morning tea or checking out the replay. Let me ask, I already see some teacups. Was the tea spilled today? Yes, I see the teacups. I see the teacups. Hey, Tanika.
Hey, Tanika.
All right. So before we sign off, again, I have a special request for you all, amazing viewers out there. Those who've been with us, you know what my request is. If you found this episode helpful, don't keep it to yourself. Like us, when we find information, we don't keep it to ourselves. We bring it to you. Let the folks know. People need to have this information to do the roles that they are doing. So share the knowledge with your colleagues by hitting the share button. And hey, why not subscribe to our channel while you're at it? That way, you'll never miss a drop of our health information, compliance, revenue cycle, and medical coding tea. Also, if you have thoughts or questions or experiences that you want to share about today's topic, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let's keep the conversation brewing. And if you enjoyed this episode, again, give us a thumbs up. It helps more healthcare professionals find our content. And don't forget to check out my partner in success, the Coding Nurse, and his channel on YouTube. Remember, at the Saturday Morning Tea, we're all about building a community of savvy, informed marketable healthcare professionals. So, let's like, share, subscribe, and comment, and let's grow this community together. Mr. Jesse, do you have any closing remarks? Final closing remarks?
No, I've really enjoyed today's topic. I mean, querying is such a big deal, and the ABCDs of coding are is if you stick to the basics and go back to the basics, you'll never go wrong.
Yeah.
Great topic.
Yay. Yay. All right. Well, again, this has been a great session. CUPRNT sippers in a few minutes at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And remember, be safe, be kind, and don't wish for it, work for it. Until next time, take care. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.